I am seeing the presentation now.
Well, your computer's faster than mine. I don't see it on my computer yet.
I see it on mine.
Okay, so it's loading. So the first order of business is actually the call to order. I started recording this meeting about 3 minutes ago. So the meeting is called to order. We'll say it's 7:10 p.m. Also, as part of the first agenda item is welcome. Paul's already said welcome. I've already said welcome. You're all welcome. The first order of business is approval of the agenda. The agenda was sent out with a link. I know some people didn't get the link, so I will quickly read through the agenda just so people are familiar with it, and then I will ask for a motion to approve. I've already covered the first two: call to order and welcome, approval of agenda, introductions, moment of silence, approval of minutes from the last meeting, business arising from the last meeting, acknowledgement of partner associations, President's report, which is the bulk of the meeting, directors' reports. The directors' reports, as we've done for the last few years, the reports were sent out prior to, and we won't go through those reports. If anybody has questions from the reports, we can attempt to answer them. Most of the highlights from those directors' reports are also included in the President's report. Item 10 is the financial report. That's another, I guess, significant item. 11, a motion to approve the board members for next year. Item 12, which normally takes place after our lovely RA dinner, is the Ken Thane Award recipients. And then the final agenda item is closing remarks and adjournment. Now, are you still seeing the presentation, Paul? Because I don't have it on my screen.
Yep, we're still seeing the agenda.
Okay. It's great that you guys can see it. It'd be easier if I can see it, because I can't even advance the the slides until I see it.
Okay. All right, if you're not being able to do that, then probably just if you can send it to me, maybe I can run it while you're going, but let's just kind of keep moving forward, I guess.
Al, I can share my screen if that's the presentation in the working documents. I can share my screen and you just tell me which slide to change.
Well, let's try that. But some people are already seeing it, John.
Yeah, I see it. You're on page 1.
Okay.
Hit page down.
Oh, it's opening here now. Sorry, folks. So just as interest, the OVCA board has been using this virtual application for all of our meetings since the 13th of March, and it works quite well for that smaller group. You can see we're stretching our capacity here a bit with the 40 folks we've got on.
I think if you look at the top of the screen, you can page through it. It says right at the top, there's arrows, and it shows you can page through the presentation.
Yeah, I'm not even, for whatever reason, it's not coming up on this computer, which is a real pain. Oh, there it is. So agenda, call to order, proof. So yeah, so I guess jump to 2. I'm gonna go back to slide 1. The first order of business is to get approval for the agenda. So I'm just going to ask if somebody could move that the agenda be approved. And the first hand that goes up, we will take as the mover. So I got Marc Pilon and Bill Cheliak as the seconder. So I ask you to put your hands down. And now if I could ask for, I guess, is there any discussion on the agenda? Anything? Okay, Matt is raising his hand as a guest. Matt, do you have something you want added to the agenda, or was I just seeing that late? You wanted to?
That was an accident. Accident. Sorry.
Okay, thanks, Matt. So I'm not seeing any hands up. I'm going to ask for all those in favor. So the voting people to raise your hands if you're in favor of the agenda. Give that a second. Okay, so I'm counting 24 votes in favor. If I can ask you to put your hands down. Votes against approval of the agenda. Motion carried. So the next agenda item is introductions. I just wanted to point out a couple of folks that are on the line. Normally we can, at the RA Center, we ask people to stand up. We're not going to do that here, obviously. If you stand up, we won't be able to see your face anymore. But there are a couple of guests that have joined us. We do have Elaine Brimacombe. Elaine works with the OVCA as one of our volunteers, but she's also representing Curl Ontario. Curl On typically attends our meeting. I just want to make sure we have Joe Drouin from Goldline, and Goldline is a key sponsor of the OVCA, and they sponsored us last year, and they're sponsoring us again this year. And I told Joe that I would give him a few minutes to say a couple of words at this point in the agenda. So Joe, if you want to unmute. I'm assuming
Deal.
Joe.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Al. My apologies that my camera chose the wrong day to stop working, so maybe it's a benefit that you don't actually have to see me either. Goldline is still committed to the sponsorship of OVCA over a 5-year time frame. Our Nepean factory store is open and has been since the 12th of September. This is a challenging and difficult year for curling clubs. Congratulations to the clubs that have sufficient membership to open or will open soon this year. Some clubs have chosen to stay closed this season, and I am sure it was the wisest financial decision for them to do that. Goldline wants to support every club in the OVCA in any way that we can. Any club in the OVCA can buy Goldline products from us at wholesale prices. If you buy the products and resell them to your curlers, you may save them a trip down to the Nepean store, and you'll generate some additional revenue for the club in a year where revenue is critical. Feel free to call me at the Nepean store anytime if you want to discuss these matters. I'd be more than happy to look at the individual needs of any club that wants to talk. We hope to keep working with OVCA to keep curling strong and important in Eastern Ontario. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Paul, is there a reason my slides disappeared?
Maybe because I spotlighted Joe. Yeah. So whoever was running the slides, there you go.
Okay. So at this point in our meeting, we typically ask for a moment of silence to recognize that every year we lose members of our curling fraternity. I know this year there's been a couple of past presidents of the OVCA have passed on. And I'll just ask, well, I'll just mute myself for a few seconds here, and we'll think of those people that aren't curling anymore. Okay, agenda item 5. I want to keep this moving along as quickly as we can. Approval of minutes from the previous AGM. Again, those were included in the link to this meeting. And darn, I didn't print out a copy to go over. I guess at this point, I'll ask if there's any questions. It was a fairly straightforward meeting. Are there any questions on the minutes as distributed? I'm not seeing any hands go up. I'll ask for a mover to adopt the minutes. Robert Mann from the Cornwall Curling Center. Seconder, please. Stephanie Dugan from the Navy, if I remember correctly. Thanks very much. I'll again ask if there's any questions or concerns before I ask people to, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, I'm seeing 23 in favor. I'll ask you to lower your hands. Votes against. Okay, motion passed. Agenda item 6, business arising from the minutes of the meeting. There was no business arising, so that's a fairly straightforward one. And at this point, we typically acknowledge our partner associations. Normally at the RA Center, we'd have reps from most of these associations. The Ladies Curling Association, and the Ladies Curling Association is an important partner for a number of reasons. A lot of people ask the OCA, you run a mixed bonspiel, you run a men's bonspiel, why don't you run a ladies bonspiel? And the answer to that is always the LCA runs the Crystal Heart, which is very much comparable to the City of Ottawa men's or the OVCA mixed. They run a lot of other bonspiels as well, but that one in particular merges nicely with what the OVCA does. And we don't run a ladies because we don't have to. So I just wanted to acknowledge the Ladies Curling Association. The Canadian branch of the Royal Caledonia. I don't believe we have is Bill Woods on the call? I know Bill registered. I don't know if he joined. Anyway, Curling Outaouais. Another partner, we've got a number of clubs in the Outaouais, and they have a number of events that they look after on their own. Curl Ontario is a big partner. Curl Quebec, we don't have as many dealings with because we deal with Curling Outaouais on those types of issues. And finally, Curl Canada. Curl On is has been a great partner since March. They've helped us. They've helped all of our clubs, I think. A lot of the material that you're seeing on the OVCA webpage is stuff we're collecting from Curl On and helping them communicate to our member clubs. So big kudos to Curl On and everything they're doing. And I'll stop talking there. I find I'm starting to ramble. So I'm going to bring my slideshow up. It's disappeared again, and go through some slides that comprise the president's report. As I said, a lot of these points are covered in the director's reports. I just wanted to highlight a few things. So there were 21 people said this is their first OVCA meeting. So the first couple of slides are really directed at those 21, and they answer, in my mind at least, what is the OVCA? So the OVCA was founded in 1959, so 61 years ago, and it came out of the Curling Association of Ottawa. Between 62 and 2001, the OVCA acted as a coordinating body for the OVCA, Curl-On, and the branch. In fact, we collected fees for the OVCA and the branch, at least during that time period. I'm not sure about Curl-On. We continue to work closely with the partners I just finished mentioning, and we're an affiliate member of Curling Canada. There are approximately 40 member clubs. So I say approximately. Last year we started with 46, but last year we also introduced a rule whereby curling clubs can only be a member of the OVCA if they're a member in good standing of their provincial curling association. I say we introduced that rule. In fact, the rule was always in our books. We just started applying it again. So we have approximately 40 member clubs. I say approximately because there are a number of clubs that are still on the fence whether or not they want or can afford to be a member of their provincial curling organization, and that decision will have an impact on their ability to join the OVCA. So our hope is that all clubs join their provincial bodies and be members of the OVCA, but it's not always our decision. A key part of the OVCA is the development fund. So the development fund was started in 1979, and the monies that comprise the development fund, and we're talking roughly $500,000, was money that the OVCA received from running two Briars back in the 70s and 80s. And that development fund, the funds are invested, and the development fund is accessed by member clubs who wish to take a loan for capital purposes. So the ice plant broke down, emergency repairs, want to buy a new piece of equipment, and that development fund has been running since 1979 for that purpose. And there's more. I'll have more to say on the development fund later in the presentation. We also have an operating fund, and the operating fund is a much smaller fund that's managed by the OVC Board of Directors in support of our stated mission with an annual budget that's approved at this AGM. Go to the next slide. Our mission statement. So the Ottawa Valley Curling Association will develop, maintain, and support the development of curlers and curling clubs within the Ottawa Valley area through programs that are dedicated to curling development and to the betterment of curling clubs. So that's the mission statement that our board tries to keep in mind as we go through our monthly meetings and make decisions on how we're going to spend our operating fund. Just as a bit of a side note, that what we actually do to meet that mission changes year to year. And in the last couple of years, it's changed as the Curl-On have shifted a lot of their operational type work and put a lot more emphasis on the curling club. So we've found that some of the things the OVCA used to do, Curl-On is now doing. So we're trying to avoid duplication and let the Curl-On programs run where they can, and where we don't need to do something, we'll stop doing it. I'm going to move to the next slide. So OVCA event status. So these are the events that we typically run using that operational pot of money to make them happen. The Gold Line City of Ottawa men's, it was canceled in 2020, and it's canceled for 2021. The OVCA Mixed is also canceled for 2021. The OVCA Mixed, we did run that Bonspiel prior to COVID in 2020, but it is canceled for 2021. The BrokerLink OVCA Junior Super Spiel is canceled for 2021. And the Hogline OVCA Little Rock Championship is canceled for 2021. Now, the main reason for those events being canceled, you might think that's early, but we typically book the ice for those events before now. And most of the clubs, or all of the clubs that we spoke to, had already taken the decision that they weren't going to entertain outside events in their clubs, a position we certainly understand. So it was a fairly straightforward decision to cancel these events for this year. I don't think there's any big surprise there. The 2021 LGT World Men's Curling Championship was awarded to Ottawa, April 3rd to April 11th at TD Place, so Lansdowne Park. Curl Canada has an update scheduled for the 4th of November, when we'll find out if that event is going to go ahead, and if it goes ahead, what the format's going to look like, and we'll get on with our role in completing the planning to support that. So those are our major events that we normally talk about. Some other things that we normally do, Learn to Curl. So OVCA has run Learn to Curl Train the Trainer training sessions. That program has more or less run its course. That's one of the areas where Curl On is now running a program. So we're trying to, again, remove duplication. And based on training that's been completed in previous years, we're expecting a low demand for the OVCA to run any sessions this year. Ice Tech workshops. This is something that Bill Duck has run for the OVCA at the end of the curling year for the last couple of, well, didn't happen in 2020, but it happened in 2019 and I believe 2018. So Bill's going to assess the demand and the need to run that tech workshop, Ice Tech workshop again this year as the year progresses. Coordination of youth curling activities, youth symposium, orphan clinics. Our youth director is proceeding with those, and they've had a number of virtual activities aimed at supporting the youth curling. So that's ongoing. Providing grants to support curling in a variety of ways as our funding allows. The bulk of our grants last year went to teams that were progressing to provincial championships. We're anticipating a very low demand for those types of grants this year. And you'll see that reflected in the budget. Development fund status. So I mentioned the development fund earlier on. Funds currently invested and available for loans, $413K. There are currently 10 loans to member clubs. So 10 different member clubs with a total balance between the 10 owing of $167,000. So, and there was a detailed report attached to the meeting invite. I'm not sure if it's covered anyplace else, so I'm just going to mention at this point that back in March, when we normally ask clubs to make their annual payment on those loans, we had a number of clubs, because of what was happening with COVID, we had a number of clubs ask for a bit of relief on those loans. So we offered to the 10 clubs the opportunity to only pay the outstanding interest and defer the principal payment till the next period. And we had some clubs took advantage of that, and some didn't have to. And we are going out to those 10 clubs again with that offer again for the coming year to identify, to give those clubs the opportunity to again only pay the interest and defer the principal part of the loan to a future year. And just for any of the clubs that are impacted by that, when you receive that communication or decide to go ahead with that deferment, we will be asking to re-sign a revised loan agreement to reflect the new repayment schedule. That's it for the development fund. So OVCA operational funding, and again, this is a bit of an educational type slide that I'll speak to. Our normal funding is about 40K a year, and we collect that approximately 20K from member fees. So the $75 a sheet that we charge to be a member of the OVCA, you multiply that by the approximately 40 clubs, the number of sheets they have, and we generate a figure just under 20K in member fees. Another 20K comes from investments. So the development fund is, those monies are invested, and the interest earned off those, it's set up so that that feeds into the operating fund. You know, one way of looking at it is, if we wanted to do the exact same work without that development fund, we'd have to charge double in OVCA fees to have the same budget. So we're very fortunate that we have that development fund generating interest. Sorry, I'm just getting a notice here that Roger Smith is waiting in the lobby, so I'm sure Paul will let him in. I didn't mention it in the slide, but we also have a source of funding through sponsorship. So in a normal year, that 5-year sponsorship that Joe mentioned from Goldline generates another 5K per year in normal funding. In addition to that, special events funding. So proceeds from hosting major curling events. So we hosted a Briar and we hosted the Roar of Rings a few years ago. Both of those generated large numbers of dollars that went into that were available to go into our operational funding. So a lot of that money was pushed out to the clubs. Some of it is still in our bank account, and it provides us a very enviable cushion for a number of years. The 2021 World Men's Curling Championship was meant to be our next special event that we hope will generate some additional funding to come into the OVCA. And we'll wait for the November 4th announcement to find out where that's going to go. Okay, a couple of budget highlights. So we're currently forecasting, I'm calling it a 22K deficit. It's not really a deficit because we do have funding reserves. That is based on a number of things that were included in the budget. Most significantly for the member clubs, that includes an assumption that we are charging no club membership fees. So when Gord goes over the budget in a couple of minutes, the club membership fees is shown as 0. So assuming that the budget is approved, then we won't be charging membership fees for the OVC membership this year. And I mentioned earlier the operating fund balance is just over 200,000. So we can absorb that 22K deficit because we happen to have that operating fund balance. And again, that operating fund balance is the remains of the profits from the Briar and the Roar of the Rings that were hosted in Ottawa several years ago. Okay, at this point, I think, oh, sorry, agenda item 9. So that was it for the president's report. Are there any questions? I should have probably asked. I don't see any hands going up, so I'll keep moving. So the director's reports, so these were all included with the link: the youth curling, communications, club liaison, OVCA competitions and events, vice president's report, development fund report. If anybody didn't get a chance to read them and you want to, just send send us an email, president@ovca.com, and we can get you the information if you weren't able to and you're interested in reading any of it. Okay, so agenda item 10 is the financial report. And I'm going to mute and ask Gord to speak to the financial report.
Thank you, Al. Al's really done quite the job of highlighting the major items for this year. I will cover first our engagement report, which unfortunately is not ready for this meeting. That is the financial statements for the 1920 year. It's still with our auditors and being worked on. We will make that available to all member clubs once the document is published. What I can give you is a quick highlight that for the 1920 fiscal, we're forecasting on paper a $52,000 deficit. 27,000 of that was a planned deficit in the budget. In fact, if you go back to last year's budget and compare it to the actuals that I've presented with the budget this year, it's pretty well bang on. It's about 25K loss that we end up having on the operational side. But we also have, because of the COVID and because of what COVID did to the financial markets in March, we do have a 27,000 unrealized loss, which means it's not an actual loss because we haven't cashed in those shares that were affected by the downturn. But on paper, we've lost another 27K. It is slowly starting to come back, and we'll monitor that, including our investment risk profile going down the road. So before I go to the budget, is there any questions? Seeing none, I'll move forward. Al pretty well covered all the major items in the budget, and that is that we've reduced our expenses where we can. We still have our fixed costs, such as insurance, auditors, telephone, internet, website, such as those. We also have some costs related to the World 2021 bid in terms of monies required for the planning committee to move forward. And we've also waived all of the amounts of revenues we normally get from the clubs, the club membership, and paying your annual dues. And that amount is typically about $23,000, which is pretty well exactly what the deficit is projected to be for this fiscal, for the 2021 fiscal. So I don't, unless I'll entertain questions, Al, but other than that, I would, if there are no questions, we need a motion to actually approve the budget for the 2021 season. I'll pass it back to you. Al, you're on mute.
Some people probably like it that way. So I'll ask, I'm not seeing any hands up for questions. I'll ask, do I have somebody to move that the budget be adopted as presented? Theo Hunter, seconder. If Theo puts his hand down, I'll see who's next there. Robert Mann. Okay, thank you, Theo and Robert. Bill, you're just 2 seconds behind them. All those in favor? Okay, I have 25 in favor. Okay, put your hands down. Any votes against the budget being adopted? I've got one hand up, Brent Guest. Oh, Brent took his hand down. Okay, so the budget is approved as presented. Okay, so the next agenda item is the OVCA board. I just wanted to point out that John Tobias, who in a few minutes will be introduced as the incoming president, put a lot of work this past year into reaching out to the various clubs, and he helped bring in one of our new board members, Linda Cox, who is our club liaison rep, and the two of those folks spent a bit of time ensuring that we made contact with all of the clubs in the OVCA. One of the questions that we've asked is, do any of the clubs know anybody that would be interested in joining the OVCA board? And thanks to that, we were able to identify Ron Guibault from Russell, Linda Cox from Navy, and Lydia Cormier from Huntley, who have joined the board. Jim Stewart from Manotick left the board, and Cheryl Carroll from Cityview left the board. And I just wanted to quickly mention Jim Stewart. Jim left the board after 15 years as our treasurer, which is an incredible period of time. I know when I joined the board, I was told it's normally a 4 to 5 year stint. So Jim did that 3 times. And after Jim left, the board sat and we said he shouldn't be allowed to leave as quietly as he wanted to. And we nominated him to curl on for recognition of his 15-year tenure. And in early October, Curl On confirmed that they will be presenting Jim with a Lifetime Achievement Award. Well deserved. Jim did a lot for the board. He was a treasurer. For people that are on your curling club boards, you know the importance of the treasurer. There's very little that happens in normal day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month business that doesn't have some financial component. So anyway, well-deserved recognition from Curl On, one of our partners in helping recognize a long-term member of the OVCA board. So the second motion, or not, I don't know why I said second motion. I think this is the fourth motion. So this is the board that's proposed. I didn't update this slide. I reused the slide from last year, replaced all the names, but didn't change the dates. So the motion is actually should read to accept the OVCA board for 2020-2021, comprised as follows. President John Tobias from Russell. Vice President John Blythe from Ottawa, Director of Finances Gord Butler from the Navy, Director of Communications Paul Hennessy, Director of Development Bill Duck from Hunt Club, Youth Development Ron Guibault from Russell, Club Liaison Linda Cox, Director acting as our Secretary Lydia Cormier. Ann Davis is supporting the World Men's Curling Championship effort, and Elaine Brimacombe is the head of our World Men's Curling Championship bid. So that's the board that's proposed going forward. I'm looking for somebody to move that the board be accepted. If nobody else does, I'm going to ask John Tobias to make this motion. Okay, I have Ann Davis. Ann, you can lower your hand. I'll pick the next name for the seconder. James Doonan is seconding. You put your hands down. I'll ask all those in favor. Okay, I'm seeing 23 in favor. Thank you, everybody. You can lower your hands. Any votes against? Mary, are you voting against, or you just haven't lowered your hand yet? Thank you. So unanimous. Great. I think that means my part of the meeting's over. So that was agenda item number 11. Agenda item 12, I'm going to hand over to the new president to speak to. And John, I'll move the slide forward. Ken Thane Awards. John Tobias, are you there?
You need to unmute John.
We were very fortunate in the last year to have several nominations for the Ken Thane Award, and It makes it a little difficult this year because we usually have the recipients in the room with us, and their club introduces each of the recipients, and it's a very one of the highlights of our AGM. So Al has quarterbacked the awards committee this past year. He's reached out to the clubs, so we will either go to the winning recipients club and present there, or we will do it at next year's AGM, and hopefully we're live next year as opposed to virtual. So the winners for this year from Prescott, Neil Dufour. I think Neil's attending the meetings. Congratulations, Neil. From Russell, Lucy Ladesseur. From Hunt Club, David Johnston. And from Smith Falls, Ken Wyman. So those clubs will be talking to either Al and I think Smith Falls has already done that, and we'll make arrangements to bring the plaque to your club, or we'll wait till next year at the OVCA General Meeting. Thank you.
And thanks, John. Neil, could I ask, did you already know about this? I hope we didn't surprise you. Is Neil still on? You'll have to unmute.
This is Gary Albers from Prescott. Neil was informed.
Okay, great. Okay. I was told that a virtual meeting should be less than an hour.
There's
It's
Neil. There, you can talk now.
Hi, this is
Neil.
Neil. I just want to say thank you very much. It's very much appreciated.
And we hope to get to the Prescott Curling Club to make the presentation in person. We'll see you then.
We hope to get open sometime.
Great. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so objective was to have a meeting under an hour at 7:56. I'm going to ask for somebody to raise their hand and move that we close the meeting. Richard. Oh, I didn't catch the last name before it disappeared.
Sarah Gura, and
Okay.
that's not the reason. That's not the reason why I raised my hand. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, thank you very much. No, I was quite interested in the financial aspects of the OVCA, and the fact that you have a substantial amount of money both in the development fund as well as in the operational fund. And I wanted to ask whether the OVCA has any plans to help member clubs in this very, very difficult year, particularly with respect to their operational funding.
So I'll speak to this, although I'm no longer the president. And John, if you want to jump in, please do so. Yeah, it's been at the top of our agenda for the last number of meetings we've had, and the development fund is set up. It's administered by a separate board of administrators, and it was set up by rules that were put in place back in the 70s and 80s, and it's set up for loans for those capital purchases that we spoke about earlier. So not for operating costs, and that's, I mean, there's a number of reasons for that. If we wanted to change that, it would take a fair bit of effort, and we're not convinced that we want to do that yet. I know, yes, I know from my own experience with my own club, a lot of clubs are hurting operationally, and although it looks like a lot of money on paper, if you take what we have and divide it by 40 clubs, it becomes a Band-Aid pretty quickly. So yeah, it is a regular topic of conversation. I had a couple of emails the last couple of months asking that same question, and my response, and I'll provide the same response to everybody here. We're thinking about it. What are your thoughts? Like what are people looking for other than just a handout? Like what ideas are out there as to how the OVCA could help?
Well, we could start off with the loans, for example. What I'm hearing, quite frankly, from you is that you really don't have any plans to change, for example, the development fund to open it up, for example, to pay for operational funds. I think that if you had the will to do that, you could move rather quickly.
I'm not convinced we could move quickly, but so I'm probably not the best person to try and respond to this. The development fund, I don't know, has your club taken a development fund loan?
Yes, we have indeed, and we still owe about, I think it's about $8,000 on it.
Okay. So part of the process is, I mean, much like a bank loan, is assessment of risk. I'm not sure how we get past. Yeah, I'm struggling here.
More interested in ensuring that you continue to pad the development fund, or are you willing to accept the risk in these very troubled times that a lot of clubs right now are looking at quite a bit of risk, the risk of opening, the risk of closing.
Yeah.
It's risky.
It's risky. Yeah, it's very risky. And I don't think the OVCA is. I mean, we're currently set up. Our current rules would prevent us from accepting the risk associated with a loan to a club that's at risk of closing. And yeah, if we want to change that, what would we change it to? I don't think we're going to solve it tonight. I mean, it's a great question. And as I said, it's a question that the board has had on our agenda, since probably July, when we realized what COVID was starting to do. So I certainly appreciate the input, and maybe we could follow up, not just with you, but with some more conversations on this to discuss, what could be possible. I mean, you're right. In getting ready for this meeting, myself and the rest of the board acknowledged that, when we put up a slide that says we've got, $600,000 in the development fund and another 200,000 in our operating fund, that's a big pot of money for 40 clubs that are struggling financially. So I can't say I'm surprised that the question came up.
I think John and or Ann have their hands up. If you guys want to chime in, John, Tobias, and Davis. John, you're on mute.
Okay. I did receive a request from City View. I forwarded it on to the Board of Administrators, and I want to sit down with Art and possibly John as well to look at if we can do something with a top up the loan program or something else. Because I'm sure it's going to happen more this year. And yeah, there's risk involved, but there's also benefits as well. And I've also been talking to Peter about a fundraising project for in January that I hope we could do. He's looking into the feasibility of the OVCA running something like a Chase the Ace program. So there's a couple of things in the works that we'll be talking for the rest of this month on.
Okay, thanks very much, John.
Any other questions before we, I'm sorry, I should have asked that before we got to adjourning. Anybody else have any other questions they want to raise before we? Okay, I'll ask for those in favor of adjourning. Please raise your hands. Okay, I've got 23 in favor. Anybody against? You can lower your hands, please, if you're. Let's see who's against adjourning. Please raise your hand. Okay, I'm showing 3 against. Well, that's motion is carried. So I'm going to call the meeting adjourned at 8:04 p.m. Thanks very much, everybody. And if people have follow-up questions, as I said, president@ovca.com. We'll take your questions to John Tobias. John,
Not yet. I haven't made the switch yet, Al.
But thanks everybody for taking time out of your evenings to join us and getting our budget passed and the new board in place. And if you have follow-up questions, please reach out to us.